Cervical cancer is one of the emerging health conditions threatening the lives of many women and girls in Malawi. With this in mind, it is important for women and girls to be well informed on the need for them to demand for cervical cancer screening and treatment from health service providers. Foundation for Community and Capacity Development, FOCCAD, is a youth-led organization that promotes sexual and reproductive health and rights of young people through access to quality services, advocacy for sexual and reproductive health and rights, and social and behavioral change communication related to health. FOCCAD has been conducting advocacy campaigns aimed at sensitizing women and girls on the importance of cervical cancer screening in Nkhotakota and Salima districts. Robert White is the Chief Executive Officer for Tilitonse Foundation, and he explains why his organization found it paramount to support this initiative.
The FOCCAD project is a governance project, as indicated, and what they're currently doing is they're focusing on increasing access to cervical cancer screening and treatment in Nkhotakota and Salima districts. Now, our role as the Tilitonse Foundation in supporting them is basically to make sure that the citizens within the two districts, communities within the two districts, especially women and young girls, are able to access services related to cervical cancer screening and treatment. Now, you see that by talking to them, most of the people are now getting this service readily available in health facilities, but even at the health, district health office. Our role as the Tilitonse Foundation supporting governance intervention was basically to make sure that this service is available. Communities are aware that the service is available, but again, the service and its related products are available for the people to be able to access the treatment and the screening services that are required for cervical cancer.
Through the Tilondole project, FOCCAD is focusing on advancing cervical cancer screening among the young women, teen mothers and sex workers in the two districts. Dan Tara is Executive Director for FOCCAD.
This project is called Tilondole. The government of Malawi developed the National Cervical Cancer Control Strategy. The strategy provides a number of policy directions in terms of providing services for cervical cancer that includes screening and treatment. We looked at one key challenge related to cervical cancer interventions in Malawi, especially in Nkhotakota and Salima districts, where we discovered that by this year the government had not fully rolled out implementation of screening services in most of the health facilities. For example, Nkhotakota district has 21 health facilities. By January this year, we only had 3 health facilities that were screening for cervical cancer. That meant that women had to travel longer distances to the nearest health facility to get screened. We did the same analysis in Salima district, where we discovered that out of 18 health facilities in the district, only 2 health facilities were screenings for cervical cancer. Now, if the strategy was supposed to be implemented from 2016, and now the strategy ends in 2020. So if by 2019, only a few number of health facilities were screening, we identified that that was a problem.
In an effort to ensure that cervical cancer screening is accessible to as many women as possible, FOCCAD has also been advocating for capacity building of health service providers in the two districts.
Tilondole project has a goal to ensure that health workers, health service providers who are the duty bearers in Nkhotakota and Salima districts are responsive to the needs of the 3 groups of beneficiaries that I've mentioned. Responsiveness in the sense that, number one, the health facilities that are not yet screening, we're supposed to start screening, because as a health service, It means it was supposed to be available in all the health facilities. For example, in Nkhotakota, in all 21. So if a woman walks into any health facility, she was supposed to be screened and treated for cervical cancer. Again, in Salima, if any woman who goes to any nearest health facility was supposed to be screened. We identified a number of issues that made this work impossible. One, that in most of the health facilities, there were not trained providers. So if there's no provider who is trained, then there's no way the health facility could start providing the service. Secondly, most of the facilities had no equipment to support the screening of cervical cancer.
FOCCAD is working with Nkhotakota and Salima district health personnel in a collaborative effort to reach out to as many women and girls as possible in the provision of cervical cancer screening and treatment services. Princess Montali Piri is the coordinator of the cervical cancer screening service at Salima District Hospital, and she explains what happens when a client visits the hospital.
First of all, we give the health talk so that the women should know more about the cervical cancer. Then thereafter, we take a short notes about their parity, their personal history, their age, and the like. Then thereafter, we start screening. After screening, we give them the results so that they should know how they are. If they have a VIA positive, or they have cancer suspect, or they have got no signs of cancer.
Through working with FOCCAD, health service providers have seen an improvement in the turnout of women, teen mothers and sex workers seeking cervical cancer screening services. Maona Njibanda is a nursing midwife technician at Nkhotakota District Hospital and is the focal person in the Tilondole project.
We have been holding meetings with teen mothers, people living with HIV and some youth. So we have been discussing, encouraging each other on how cervical cancer started, the mode of infection, how it can be prevented, and the treatment. Because of the advocacy and the information that our friends are giving out there, more women are now coming for cervical cancer screening.
Princess Montali Piri agrees.
Before, we screened very few women, and the turn-up was very low. After the intervention of the FOCCAD, we found out that many people, they knew about the VIA, the benefits of the VIA screening, and as of now, we are screening a lot of people. Per month, last time, we are screening 200 and something people, but now we are reaching 880 per month. That means we have achieved a lot.
Since the Tilondole project rolled out in February 2019, the number of women demanding cervical cancer screening in Nkhotakota and Salima has increased.
Kansa wakhomera chiberekero kunoko linali vuto lalikulu kwambiri project isanayambe. Chifukwa timati tikapita kuchipatala basi timabwerera osayezedwa, choncho kumabwerera basi chifukwa chenicho chobwezera chosadziwika komanso chipatala chimene chinali ndi facility chinali ndi manesi amene amayeza kansayo ndi chapaboma pokha. Ndiye kubwera kwa project imeneyi kwapangisa kuti papezekeso madokotala ena apite ku training mu health centers mupezeke kuti akuyesaso kansa wakhomera chiberekero. Ndiye zimenezi zatipindulira chifukwa panopa azimayi amene ayezedwa ndi ochuluka, amene akudziwa za mmene alili, amene amaonetsa kuti vutolo la ayamba anapatsa chithandizo choti awuzirire mpweya woti kansayo ite. Ndiye zimenezi zatithandizira kwambiri komanso zachulukitsaso chiwerengero cha ndani cha azimayi amene ayezedwa.
Komiti yathu ya haki komanso maloko leaders amidzimu adatithandiza kutsatsa ndithu kuti azimayi tsopano akhozoyamba kudzesetsa za kansa yakhomera chiberekero pano chifukwa mbuyo musamezetsa timachita kuatumiza kuboma kusalima. Ndiye panopa azimayi anachitengeranso chaphindu kwambiri chifukwa sakuluza transport kupita usalima akungobwera pompano kumayeza. Ngati mwezi wa Oktoba umene tayamba tinayeza azimayi okwana 35. Ndipo mwezi wa Novemba lawo tayeza azimayi okwana 28. Usonyeza kuti panopa azimayi akuchimvetsetsa ndipo akuchilandira.
Ziwane David Piri is one of the women that has benefited from the project.
Ndafika kunoko anesi yanga asimwaka andilandira ndipo andifotokozera zonse ofunika kuchita ndapanga bwinobwino. Ndiara ndiyeza kansa ija ndapezeka kuti ineyo sindinapezeke ndi cancer la khomo la chiberekero. Mmene ndinabwera kunoko ndinamva a FOCCAD akulengeza kunena kuti tiye azimayi tizipita ku chipatala kuyezesa khomo la chiberekero. Ndiye nditamva nditaona anzanga ena amene akuzunzikira ndi cancer khomo la chiberekero, chinanditengera ubwino ineyo kuti izi ndizaulere suti ndidzapereka ndalama iya ndipite ku chipatala ineyo chaboma ndidzayezetse. Chifukwa FOCCAD kumatheka kuti zitsulo zonse zimene adapangira kuti azineza cancer adandigulira kale ineyo. Ndiye ndinena kupita mwaulere ndikayezese. Ndiye titabwera kuna dokotala athu amatilandira bwino kwambiri. Komanso tisanayezese cancer amatiyezeso magazi. Ndiye ndi chinthu chimodzi chomwe chandipangira ubwino ineyo kuti ndapezeka cancer ndilibe, komanso matenda HIV ndilibe, zonse zandipangira ubwino moti panopa ineyo ndizikagwira ntchito molimbikira nikadzisamalaso kudziteteza kukhala ndi mwamuna wanga mmodzi.
Mary Piri is another beneficiary of the Tilondole project in Nkhotakota. Health workers suspected her of developing cervical cancer upon going for screening, and they recommended her for cervical cancer treatment. She is glad she was screened.
Atandiyeza anandipeza kuti pachiberekero changa pali timalashi. Ndatandiona dokotala anandizona kuti amene mulilimu chifukwa choti panopa mashina 2 andioperewera mupite Nkhotakota. Ndiye nditapita Nkhotakota anandiyeza zimene anandiuza panopa nchimozimozi ndi zimene anandifotozera Nkhotakota. Kuja nambo ndipasa treatment amankhwala. Anandiuza kuti mukakamwa mankhwala after 3 weeks mukabwereso tizakuoneni. Ndiye titamwa mankhwala ndinapitaso. Kandiona anandiuza kuti apapa bolani sopano malashi tichatakhala ngati kuti tikutha sopano koma mukapitize kumwa mankhwala. Koma nditamwa mankhwalawo kufikira panopa ndaona kuti moyo wanga sopano ndosangalala.
Other beneficiaries of the Tilondole project are teen mothers, as they too are vulnerable. Grace Piri is a teen mother who is encouraging fellow teenagers to go for screening.
Uphungu mina amandipasa uchipatala kuno amandiuza zonena kuti iweyo ndakupeza kuti ulibe kansayo, komano mwina ukamazidabwa mthupi mwako ndi mmene mulili uliso ndi ufulu kunonso maripeza kuti tizitatha kukunikira bwinobwino kuti kodi mthupi mwako mukuyenda bwanji. Ndikuwalimbikitsabe anzangawo kuti asafoke kuno kwazibwala ndithu akatibweresera chipangizocho choti akampeza naye kansayo azitha kumuchiziratu.
The increase in the number of women and girls seeking cervical cancer screening and treatment can best be attributed to the increase in the number of health centers offering these services.
From February up to date, in Nkhotakota district alone, we've moved from 3 health facilities to 13 health facilities that are now screening for cervical cancer. So we've got a few that are remaining, but a lot of achievements have been made in the sense that if at national level, they have engaged into the trainings of the providers and allocation of trained providers in the health facilities. In Salima now, we have moved from 2 to 12. We've got 12 health facilities that are now screening for cervical cancer after a lot of meetings and engagement sessions done, and the number of health providers also have been trained. And one thing we've also registered is that in most of these health facilities now, equipments have been distributed by the Department of HIV and AIDS, providing a conducive environment that women should not travel longer distances.
As part of the Tilondole project, FOCCAD also reaches out to sex workers. This is one group that is most vulnerable to cervical cancer by virtue of the nature of their work.
We went out in both districts, Nkhotakota and Salima, and did the mapping of hotspots. Hotspots are places where we'll find the female sex workers. When we mapped the hotspots, now we knew how many sex workers are there in the hotspots. Now we had to group the hotspots into zones and elected leadership there before we engaged into training them, mentorship, because one other approach that we are using is what we call community rights skills clinics, where we are going to gather the female sex workers, talk to them about their rights first before we discuss about the services. Because when they understand it from the right perspective, then they are able to explain and demand and then even defend their own rights. We combine them with the district network, the district PLHIV network, and then the district sex workers network. So they are not only identified as sex workers, but now they are identified as rights educators, health rights educators. With that identification, it's very easy for them to integrate well with the larger community.
Esme James is a volunteer working with FOCCAD in the Tilondole project, and she has been in the forefront advocating for cervical cancer screening among her peers at Kamuzu Road in Salima.
Ndimalimbikitsa ma sex worker anzanga kupilokezesa cancer kumwachiberekero kuti azidziwa tuli mwawo mmene mulili. Ubwinoyezetsa cancer kumwachiberekero ndi wabwino kwambiri chifukwa chonena kuti alipo ena amene sanayezetsepo cancer kumwachiberekero amangozikhalira samadziwa tuli mwawo ndi mmene mulili, komanso matenda ochuluka amene amabwera kudzera kwa ife azimayi kuchokera mkati mwathu. Ndi matenda aja akamabwera sitimadziwa zoti ndi chiyambi cha cancer kapena ayi, koma tikathamangira ku chipatala amatha kutiuza zonena kuti ili ndi vuto loti mwayamba cancer. Ikakhala zoti kuyamba kumene amatha kukatotcherera imatha, koma ikakhala zoti yakhuzekera iwo sangakwanitse amangopereka mankhwala oti izizizira kuzimvako ululu ochepera thupi mwako. Pamene munthu ukafulumira upita ukayezetsa cancer, mavuto ngati amenewo samakutani samakupenza ayi.
Sex workers like Patuma Addison and Patuma Hare, who ply their trade at Kamuzu Road, are grateful that now they have an opportunity to go for cervical cancer screening services and are able to know their status.
Titabiro chipatala anatilandira bwino mene zinthu zimakhalira zimafunikira palibe chiopsezo chilichonse pa moyo wathu. Chifani mene makhalira kale timakhani chiopsezo kuti mwina ndili nayo pakena ndilibe, koma pano pasilikhaso mamantha fa tinadziwa mene tilili, ndipo tsiku mmene lidzafunikire zakazikatha tizapitanso kazipanga cheki kuti tikaone zoti thupi lathu liliso bwanji.
Poyamba sinimaziwa chinechi chonse, ndipo sinimaziwa za cancer kumwachiberekero, koma atabwera azalangizi anabwera kuzatitenga kuzatilimbikitsa zoti tizirani tipite tikayezetse cancer, ndipo anabwera kuzatitenga ndipo tinapita kuchipatala kukayezetsa cancer. Poyamba timaopa timaona ngati kuti zopweteka anthu amati opseza zokuti akakuchosa ndi chiberekero chani, ndiye tapita kumene kuja ayi tinazoona kuti zabwinobwino nalo ankachipinda ndipo atatiyesa cancer, ndipo tinapezeka kuti tili bwinobwino, ndipo anatiuzanso zoti tipite pakatha zaka ziwiri.
The Foundation for Community and Capacity Development, FOCCAD, has reached out to women and girls in Salima and Nkhotakota, advocating and sensitizing them on the imperative of cervical cancer screening.
We are very much satisfied. You know, when you are doing governance intervention anywhere, it's not an end on its own. You do governance as a conduit to make sure that development takes place. So on our part as Tilitonse Foundation, we've been able to mobilize communities, we've been able to praise service providers like the district health office to provide this service. As a result, you see that a lot of people within Nkhotakota and the Salima districts are able to access this service. So for us, that's an achievement. It's a result because our governance interventions or our governance activities that we're supporting through FOCCAD have led to access for this service to be more in the two districts. So for us, that's a success and that's a result.
FOCCAD has also helped build the capacity of health service providers in the two districts. What remains as of now is to see that the progress that has been realized in the two districts rolls out to all districts in the country.
We had two key outputs or strategies used in this project. Number one was to build the capacity of these three groups: female sex workers, women living with HIV, and teen mothers, so that they're able to interface and demand for these services from the health workers, because sexual and reproductive health is a right. Our entry point was through the networks. One, we looked at the network of people living with HIV to support in advocacy and holding the duty bearers accountable. We also looked at the district youth networks to support the teen mothers in speaking for them to access their services. And again, we also established, mobilized sex workers and started zonal networks and even the district network for female sex workers. So we've used and worked with these groups after training them in health rights, advocacy and negotiation skills to be able now that they can start demanding for the quality services in the health facilities.
From the interventions that FOCCAD is involved in, one message is clear: early cervical cancer screening and treatment saves life, hence the need for women and girls to demand these services from the providers.